Welcome back to the Edge podcast. Our guest today was the seventh ranked national tennis recruit in the class of 2020, currently a junior at the University of Texas at Austin. She's studying applied movement science. And this past season, she was on the NCAA Championship All-Tournament Team at number 2 for doubles and the Big 12 Championship All-Tournament Team at number 4 for singles. Thank you so much for taking the time, Charlotte.
Thanks, AK. Thanks for having me.
I'd love to start kind of where it all began. The first time you kind of picked up a tennis racket, what drew you to tennis initially, and what was your kind of earliest memories of tennis like?
So pretty much when I started playing tennis, I began when I was 3, and it was just like a way for me and my dad to spend time. He saw I was pretty athletic, and it was just a way to burn off energy. You know what I mean? So then I kept playing, and there was never really a time until I was like about 10 or 11 where I was like, man, I want to be like a pro tennis player. It was really just like for fun, and I wanted to, like compete and play the sport. And in all honesty, like I was not really like a great tennis player and one of the best until I was about like maybe like 15 or 16. And so I just got lucky at the right time when things started going well. When I was younger, like obviously I wanted to win and I wanted to, be the best like that there was. And I wasn't really like the best tennis player. I mean, I lost to some people who I should have not lost to. And I remember my dad was saying like, hey, just keep it up and just keep going after it. His thing was like, genetics will kick in when I'm losing in the 12 and unders. He just keep playing and, keep working on yourself. Like right now is not like about winning time, you got to win later. And I really like bought into that. And it turned out it was really right. Those people that you would lose to in like the 12 and under, like a lot of them, fell off the map, and a lot of them don't even really like, play college tennis, and a lot of them actually quit. So I think what kept me going really to keep playing tennis was how much I really loved the game. Like I said, I wasn't winning very many matches. So it's not because I love the feeling of winning. It was because I love tennis.
Sure.
And when I told you I started getting good at tennis, was when I was 15 or 16. I think like something clicked. I changed coaches. I got I had a connection. Somebody told me go work with the USTA, which is the tennis association for US. And from there on, like, they were saying like you have a lot of potential. And you're just like they said this. You're kind of like a diamond, you just need to like, sharpen up the edges and, just file it down, just polish it. And, I bought into like what they were saying. I really listened to my advice, and, my tennis career like started taking off. So it was thanks to them that really like brought it out of me, and really like my dad.
Gotcha. And as you transition and got into UTA, what was your college recruitment process like, and ultimately why Texas?
So going back to college tennis, when I got recruited, I remember my first call was from Princeton. And I remember like when I was getting recruited, I wasn't even sure like where I wanted to college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I answered every phone call, and I never said like, hey, no, I'm not going to do this. I just gave every coach a chance. And to begin with, my dad was like, you know what, you should go to like these private schools like Duke, these small SMU, like these small private schools, so you can get like attention, and you're going to be paying $60,000 a year, but it's going to be for free. Like, why would you want to go to a public school and like have to fight all these like nerds and get all like, what I'm talking about, right? Like you get at a private school, you get handed like the white glove treatment. So at the beginning, we were really interested in like private schools, and I remember I was really looking. I really wanted to. I didn't want to go to Stanford, but I was just keeping my options open. Like I still wanted to be a pro, and the goal was with college recruiting and picking out a college was, what's the best program that's gonna make me like a pro tennis player. And it was also just like where I fit in and where I really liked the school, all that. Like I said, I started off with like the Ivies, and I started off with the private schools. I went to go take a whole bunch of unofficials, and I really liked the coach. The coach at Princeton was, I think, a former top 30 player. in the world, but it was just like the amount of money because Ivies don't have scholarships. I kept going through my recruiting process, and it was actually not until like May of my senior year that I was getting recruited by Texas. So that's why I mentioned in the detail of I talked to every coach that's reached out to me, because I was at Roland Garros, which is the French Open, playing qualies. I was alone in Europe, and at the time, Northwestern was recruiting me like really, really hard. They came out to watch me in Italy. Like every match I played, they spoke to me after the match, gave me an analysis. I would say like they spoke to me at least 3 times a week because they really, really wanted to get me. So I was at Roland Garros. The Northwestern coach comes and watches me, and I play like a really great match. And the head coach, Howard Joffe, after the match comes up to me and was like, "Hey, that was a really, really good match. It was high quality tennis by the two of you." And at the time, I didn't even know who he was. I knew he was a Texas coach, but I thought maybe he might have been just like the men's coach or whatever, because there was a site between men and women. And later I find a DM from him, from Howard, saying like, "Hey, it was really good to watch you today. Like, my name is Howard. I'm the head women's tennis coach at Texas. I would love to talk to you if I have a chance." So I talked to him after the tournament ends, and I hear what he has to say. And I really liked what he had to say, like how he runs his team, what he expects out of his players, what his goals are. And I was like, you know what? Like, let's take a visit here. Let's I wanna see what this guy has to say.
Well, a lot of nuggets I kind of want to pull from, and kind of want to start by jumping back a tiny bit. You mentioned your dad had this kind of like immediate unwavering confidence in you. It was just like, keep playing through it. Eventually something will click. Wondering if there's anything that you were doing from the beginning, like right when you started playing tennis, that you kind of pay, you think that you could point to, like, that's the reason why eventually everything worked out. And are there any things like in your daily routine or when you're warming up or anything like that you still do to this day?
I think it was just like how much like I just bought into the system. Like how there's the cliche, like, keep training and like the hard work will pay itself out, or it will work itself out. I think it's actually really true. My dad believed in me, and when I honestly in myself didn't believe in myself, he was the one that, kept me going. Like, we've had our fights, like him and we fight like just every tennis parent. But the one thing that he did have on me was this belief that like I can do this. And I think he was the one that pushed me, and I kept doing like my thing, kept, practicing and working hard. And that's honestly, I think what got me to become like a better tennis player. And I think also main thing was I really enjoyed tennis. Unlike a lot of my peers when I was younger, about 15, 16, like a lot of kids burn out. And they're only doing it because, they're good at it, or they don't know anything else and they want to get into college. But the difference between me and them was like I genuinely loved every second I spent on the court, whether it was like hard, I wasn't playing well. I don't think I've ever said like I hate this tennis, I hate this sport. I would, and like actually meant it. Like, I don't think I've ever said I hate tennis. I've heard a lot of my friends said like, "God, this sport sucks," or "I hate this." But even when I was playing bad, I genuinely enjoyed being on the court. Like, it's stressful because I'm a competitor. I want to do well. And deep down, I know I should be doing better. But it was just like, I love the feeling of like hitting balls and being, out on the court.
I had a UNC tennis player on, a good friend, Anuj Watane, and we kind of spoke about how he would take these, like as a high schooler, even as a middle schooler, play internationally, and there would be these long weeks. You'd have a tournament in Japan, and if you lost, it's like one and done, and then you have to wait a week, and you're flying. And he was homeschooled, and his dad would kind of quit his job and traveled full time with him. And there was like periods of that where it was just very kind of lonely, like there's added stress. So I was wondering on your end and your story, playing internationally at such a young age, did you like, what was your thought process coming into it? For you, was it just like, oh, this is another tennis game? Or do you kind of know like externally, okay, there are college coaches here, like obviously my parents are, taking time out of their schedule, everything is pouring a lot into me. So what was your thought process through that?
I actually know Anuj. I've met him on the little ITF circuit that we were playing
Gotcha.
when we in like Montreal or something like that. But yeah, when I was traveling, I started traveling internationally when I was 13. And it was just like my dad and I started getting older. My dad was really pushed me to go make friends. Don't just go and hang out with the little American kids that go out and actually meet people. So I would go and meet people. I have a lot of friends. And after a while, when I became like 15, 14 or 15, like he let me travel alone because one of the biggest reasons was how expensive traveling was. My dad broke it down to me. I remember before I got discovered by the USTA, I was paying, let's say, about $2,000 a month, $500 a week, and on tennis lessons. And my dad was like, look, that's like a full-time job that I'm supporting, like this coach of yours. And then plus, the traveling that I have to support you with. And so that was probably like the biggest thing that I was worrying about when I was playing, was like, oh my God, you said it yourself that you play one and done and like you're out of the tournament. Like, what am I supposed to do the rest of the week? Or gosh, my dad and my parents are spending so much money on my tennis and like I can't be losing to someone like this bad. I should be beating somebody who is beatable and I should be winning, but then I lose. So it does take a toll, like when you think about how much your parents spend and how much they invest in you. And really like the way you feel is like, gosh, my only job was to go out there and play. And sometimes in my head, I'd be like, my only job was to win, but then I didn't, and I'm letting like myself down and I'm letting my parents down because they spent so much money. And then like a thought process would be going again, like, gosh, am I ever gonna become a pro if I can't beat someone like this? So you keep spiraling and spiraling. And, my dad and I would fight after the match, especially if I lost to somebody like, I should have not lost to. And like he'll beat me down and be like, you suck, like all this stuff that he would say. But then like I know he was telling me like out of anger, so it does, take a toll on you as like a person and mentally. But he was also the guy who was like, look, I still think you can do this. Like he's really honest with me, and he's one of those guys who will like not sugarcoat anything. So he was really like trustworthy, and you really believe what he had to say. But then again, it's like traveling. You know that like you're spending a lot of money. A lot of times when I would be in like the hotel room or like with another person, I would share another like a room with another girl. So I remember before like the trip would start, I would look at the acceptance list and I would see like, okay, who do I know? And if I would text them like, hey, do you want to share a room in whatever Costa Rica? And they'll be like yes or no, or my mom's coming or whatever. And if let's say there's nobody that I knew on that list, I would actually just have to, just send it to everybody and see who will say yes. So I made a lot of friends that way. But the biggest thing was because like you needed to save money. And I would try to find like these little shortcuts to how to do it. Let's just say like I was probably one of the most blue collar travelers out there with my dad.
Gotcha. That's awesome to hear. And kind of one thing there that kind of ask Anujas too, and I'm sure your answer is going to be equally kind of stunning to me because I've actually never met other than Anuj like someone at such a young age traveling, and in your case, kind of doing it all on your own. So, does any part of you kind of regret not having that traditional, high school experience, or I guess in your case, even like end of middle school experience, and then having that structured thing where it's like classroom, you go play tennis, and you have all the other events. And do you feel at times like I grew up just a little too fast?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I still look at some of my teammates and some of the kids out on campus. I'm like, man, like I learned this when I was like 15. But yeah, like when literally my dad, the way it felt was he like just threw me into the world and I had to like figure it out, like how to travel and how to like, be quick on my feet. He was good at teaching me and I paid attention. But when the time actually came, the very first time I traveled on my own, I was like, oh my God, like luckily he sent me up to a place where I've been there before. But, you start getting experience, you start learning like what needs to be done. I would say the biggest thing was when I was alone, like it literally means like you're alone. You got to figure out like where to eat, who to practice with, who can you like hitch a ride off of. How are you doing with yourself mentally? Like, am I doing enough? So you're really like, there's more added stress on like other factors we shouldn't have to worry about. And that was like one of the things that kind of shaped me as like a person, like I have empathy about, what coaches do, or what my dad did for me when I was traveling. I start seeing it when I'm on the court with or with the teammates. Like I see like, okay, I need to do this. I need to adjust the way I do things. And and you like kind of learn, you just kind of grow up. You have to grow up fast. It's kind of like a sink or swim type of deal, because sometimes like I'll be in El Salvador and you got to pay attention. Like you can't be on the phone like walking around with the iPhone at night talking to your mom or your dad. Like you got to pay attention, and you got to go travel, and then you find times where it's like appropriate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And you touched on something there that I think we could spend hours talking about. But mental toughness. Definitely want to hear a little bit about how, obviously you talked a little bit about it and can see how mentally tough your early years were in shaping it. What's, I guess, a time where either, I guess, you start on the court, like your mental toughness like has just been rattled, and how do you kind of center yourself again?
I didn't learn how to be mentally tough on the tennis court until I was like 15 or 16 when I went to USTA. And I think that's one of the hardest things with tennis is just as mental as it is physical. So a shot that, you would, one of those like easy shots that you would get at like 1-0 or 2-all, like early in the match is like, it's easy. Suddenly at like 4-all, when there's a little bit of wind, or when there's a little bit of adversity, that shot becomes so much harder. And missing that, because of the scoreline is so like close and so close to winning, it gets in your head, so it can ruin your confidence. And I remember when I was younger, like my biggest issue was I would go and play, and I told you I would play people who I shouldn't lose to, and I would miss a couple shots, and it would get in my head, like, oh my gosh, I'm playing so badly today, like I shouldn't be losing to this girl. And I remember I would lose the match because I got so like overwhelmed and anxious and upset that I wasn't even playing like my game. And my dad would yell at me and be like, you didn't control your emotions. Like you need to calm down. Like, why are you always getting so upset? And I'm like, well, because it's like a lot of pressure here. Like I gotta win because you're paying so much money, and I'm playing bad, and I shouldn't be losing to this person. Like that's the thought process. And when I got older, when I went to the USTA, I told my dad, I was like, the biggest difference between Dr. Bob, the mental coach, versus you. Dr. Bob says, you both say like calm down, but Dr. Bob actually gives me the solutions to like learn how to calm down. You're just telling me like what's already obvious. The milk spilled. You're telling me that the milk spilled. Like, yeah, I know the milk spilled. So how do I calm down? And Dr. Bob gave me like some pretty good like resources. A lot of it had to do with breathing techniques and a lot of visualization. So that was what gave me confidence, and I learned how to like control emotions. And another thing I think that played a big role was when I was at the USTA, I didn't want to get kicked out, so I couldn't have a bad attitude, so I had to learn how to like reel it in and control it, But I would say the biggest thing was Dr. Bob teaching me how to like manage the emotions and learning how to breathe. What are the strategies? Like, what can I tell myself to get myself back into what he calls the optimal performance state. And even today, I'm still working on it. One of the hardest things right now is like with school and tennis and all that, like, you're tired, you have more added stress. Like I'm going. So just imagine like having to do that when you're like a little bit more tired. And fortunately for Texas, they have me with a therapist, and we're working on that. And a lot of the stuff that we're doing, it's being applied into like everyday life. And I'm able to apply it in my everyday life and on the tennis court and vice versa. Before with Dr. Bob, it was just like strategies of like, I was kind of like a machine, if that made point, if that makes sense. I was, all right, points over. All right, go back to the strings, go back to the towel, tell yourself like, let's go, bounce, and then, reset. And that was like, that's how I was.
Gotcha. That's awesome. And one thing that kind of stands out to me, and one thing I'd love to know, or sorry, first on the side is I've had the chance to photo shoot a couple of your matches, and it's kind of like a not really, it's like a running theme in our whenever we shoot tennis games. Or what I heard was like, all right, Charlotte, she's gonna show emotion. Like, trust me, you need to shoot Charlotte. Like, she's gonna show the best emotion. So that's like awesome. Yeah, it's very true. And one thing, also is on the court, as much as tennis is, individual or even like two people event at a time, the the family that Texas has and the team that y'all have built is so like electric, and you can just feel the energy. And I see points when people are down. I've seen people turn around entire matches, kind of like pushed, like just full energy from the team and the teammates, everyone else watching. So kind of what has that experience been like for you now, kind of having, before it was just you alone on the road, and now you're at Texas, and wherever you are, at the very least you have all your teammates cheering you on, and your coach is there to kind of support you.
Well, what I wanted to finish with the reason why what sold me on Texas was when I first got here, when I went on my visit, I was like, this is where I can see myself be. And it was also like another selling point was the community and how well Texas was. I mean, I remember walking around with some of the teammates, and I liked just how well they got along. And I liked how the community was with like the men's team, the women's team, athletics in general, how welcoming everybody was. So that was for me the biggest selling point. And when I'm on the court, going back to your question of, people are pulling for me, it was definitely like something new. I wasn't used to playing in front of big crowds, and it kind of like surprised me. But then when we were here, when everyone is like on the same page, like we all have the same goal in mind, and we all want to accomplish the same thing, it makes life a lot easier that you're not alone in this world, and you have people supporting you, whether it's just me and my dad or whatever. You have other people in the same position as me who want the same thing. So it's nice to be able to talk to them and see that they're pulling for you. In regards to traveling, it makes life so much easier. I mean, Texas is paying for all the travel. I can bring 2 bags, a racket, check it all in. My dad and I, it was just a tennis bag, stuffed clothes, and we're going to carry that onto the plane on Spirit. And my dad and I used to stay at like really crappy hotels. Here at Texas, we're staying at the Courtyards, and kind of got a little pampered and a little spoiled compared to how it was before.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, it's always awesome to hear kind of especially see parallels between you and Anuj, obviously in so many ways, coming from you guys are doing everything yourselves back to kind of a more structured environment, which is kind of obviously like a total 180 of how 99% of other kind of kids go through it. And that's awesome. Kind of touching on Texas a little bit more, would love to hear kind of the NIL infrastructure, kind of your involvement in NIL, and also like you've been seeing a lot of your teammates or like peers at other colleges kind of evolve into, whether it be like content creators doing, TikTok or whatever else. I know Anuj is starting his own podcast, and then also on the side of embracing these different brands, sponsorships, and then obviously Peyton turned pro, but at a time in Texas had a few NIL deals there as well.
Okay, well, I'll give you some backstory before NIL happened. So there was a thing where like when you went to college, you didn't have any sponsorships or whatever because the school was paying for it. So when I was in the juniors, I was sponsored by Yonex and Fila. And as soon as I got to college, I got to give that all up. And the way that when NIL came out, or when it did come out, you're able to like keep those like sponsorships. So you can see people who like just are graduating high school, and let's say they were sponsored by Adidas. They're able to maintain like that relationship with Adidas. So like when they're going to play in a match that's not for their college, they're going to be wearing their Adidas apparel or whatever, or keep getting like their sponsorship money or whatever they're doing. And they just got to like mark it as if they're not sponsoring you because of how good you are. They're sponsoring you because of your name, image, and likeness. And honestly, I didn't really have that much experience with NIL. It's still a new navigating process, and that's what they tell us. But I like to make fun of myself that I have an unofficial NIL with Susie Cakes. So I go to Susie. There's this bakery shop that I really like, It was one of my good friends told me about it when we were in Dallas. And then they made a one in Austin. So I go to Susie Cakes and I say to them, I'm actually a UT tennis player. What do you guys think about NILs? And they're like, what is NIL? And I'm like, well, it's kind of like a sponsorship, but you're not sponsoring me because I'm a good tennis player. You're sponsoring me because you like me. And they're like, yeah, we can do that. So it's kind of like a verbal handshake agreement. So every time I'm there, the manager Tickery is like, hey Charlotte, like how's it going? So I bring some of my friends in, I'll go buy like a slice, and then Tickery cuts it a little too small, the cake, like another slice too small, so she has to give it to me. Or like, hey, we got like some new flavors and I get to try them and all that. So that's why you'd see on my Instagram, happy to be at Susie Cakes, because they just make my day. And regarding, the other NIL stuff with the contracts, I'm not too sure. You're mentioning Peyton. She had a couple NILs when she was in college. It was true. I think she had like Southern Tide. I'd have to ask more about her, like what was the process, but it was pretty much like the basic knowledge of you can't be sponsored because of how good you are as a tennis player, even though she's a phenomenal tennis player, and that's the reason why she's getting sponsored. But she was also a really nice girl, really marketable person, and it's awesome that she was getting like these cool NIL stuff.
Gotcha. Yeah, and now it sounds like you want to, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to play tennis professionally. So how has kind of being in around the space here at Texas kind of helped prepare you to go professionally, whether that be, just like training wise, things else, like whatever else you need to get done, obviously like kind of the business end, now you kind of have more of an idea of things you kind of need to get done and want to get done. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Okay, so with the tennis side of things, one of the things that Howard sold me on was he loved writing out lesson plans, and I liked how he really took initiative with wanting you to get better. And that was not something common with other tennis programs. I've heard people say, yeah, you'd kind of tell the coach what you want to do. You'd say like, hey, can we work on some backhands? Or they might give you like some feedback on here and there. But Howard's very adamant about seeing things, and he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I really like that because it showed how much he cares about you, like, and wants you to get better. It's not just like, all right, you're a good tennis player. You guys go do whatever you want to do. You guys do what you need to do. He's like, no, we're going to do it this way. And, if he needs some input, I'll be able to talk to him about what I need. So, and another thing that sold me on Texas was how good our team was. When I was going to go get recruited to play at like Northwestern, Princeton, or whatever, I probably would have been playing like one or two as a freshman, which is, that means you're a pretty good tennis player. I remember when I was 16, I beat the number one ranked player in the nation, like 6-3 or whatever. And I didn't even know that she was ranked that highly. So the biggest thing that sold me was I would rather surround myself with people who are similar minded as me. They want to be pros, and to practice with, just a very good team, because essentially I'll be with them 7 days a week or 5 days a week to practice versus playing in a match where it's just 2 days a week and surrounding myself with like, people who don't really want to play tennis or they don't have pro aspirations. And when I surrounded myself with people who wanted to be pros and they wanted to work hard, it just made your like motivation to get better, like increase so much. You're just in that environment. Of course, you're going to get better. And of course, you want to try harder. And that was what it was in like my freshman year. I remember we had Peyton, Anna, Lulu, me, Kylie, Malika, Fenya, Marta, Tiana, and all like even the walk-ons, they weren't trying to be pros, but they were there. Like they wanted to do this and they liked tennis. And like that was their thing. Like they want to go out there and try. They want to get better somehow. And that was just like a great environment that I saw, because I knew Lulu, Peyton, Kylie, and Malika before I came into college. And if they're there at Texas, I know I'm going to be getting some good practice. They're not going to fizzle out and they're not going to like tank. So I know I'm going to be surrounding myself in good teammates. And my dad was like, well, you're going to be playing like 4. You're not going to be making NCAAs. I'm like, I would rather just get better and, focus on winning as a team and not the individual tournament, and just use that as like a way for me to get good. I remember in my freshman year, my record was like 33-1. I lost one match in singles. So I was doing pretty well, and it translated over into my little pro tennis tour over the summer. I beat some really good players. And I think it had to do with just my environment and like how I was playing or who I was surrounding myself with. Because I think the biggest thing I remember in my freshman year was how much we all pushed each other and how much everybody loved tennis. My friend Fenya, she's gone now, and she's just playing on the pro tour. It was just like I would get so excited hitting with her because she just brought this energy, like, yeah, let's go. Lulu, like, even though she was so quiet, you can totally see in her body language how much she really like wants to get better. Same thing with Kylie. Like, Kylie's passionate about tennis. Peyton, obviously, like we both know, she's top 150 in the world, so she's gonna come out there and play. Malika, like that girl, I mean, she tried to beat me. Like, she would hook in practice. I mean, we would talk to her about it. Like, you can't be doing that. But it was just like those little things. Like, you can tell, like, she wanted to win. Like, she wanted to play and she wanted to compete. You know?
Definitely, yeah. From the limited but like kind of numerous conversations I've had with student athletes, one of my biggest takeaways has been iron definitely sharpens iron. And I guess that's kind of the way when I think of like the friends I've kind of naturally been around with, all also really highly motivated people trying to do really impactful things with their lives. And that's definitely kind of forced me to level up and like look at myself like, am I really like pushing myself as hard as I could be going? So that's great to hear. Would love to cap off this amazing podcast with kind of 3 rapid fire questions. Starting off with, who is the GOAT in tennis?
I think Federer is the GOAT, and Serena.
Gotcha. Awesome. If your teammates could describe you in one word, what would it be?
I would say like passionate, and hardworking.
Gotcha. And finally, what do you believe is your edge?
My edge, I think it's just the way I grew up, how tough I am. In life may not look like that sometimes on the tennis court, but I know that I can, go through adversity and I'll make it out okay.
Gotcha.
So I guess resilience.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much, Charlotte, for your time. Best of luck moving forward. I'm sure you're going to crush everything, and looking forward to hopefully taking more pictures, more videos, and seeing you just dominate on the court. And is there anything else you would love to plug or add? Maybe Susie's.
Susie, I would just say, like, come support Texas women's tennis. We usually play on Fridays and Sundays. And AK, thanks so much for having me, and this is a great podcast.
For listening to this episode of the Edge podcast. I will have all of Charlotte's socials linked down below. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.